Hello, everybody, and welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. Today's episode is brought to you by In the Reads. In the Reads provides beautiful, affordable artwork of the vibrant worlds found within your favorite books, TV, and films. From all wood bookmarks featuring illustrations and quotes from such fandoms as Star Wars, The Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Outlanders, and more, to fantasy and real-life maps drawn in the style of Tolkien. Go to inthereads.com and check out what is available. Like something? Use code TALES10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. A link will be in the show notes along with the code. And now, let's get to the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. It is the end of November. We are getting ready to finish off the 2022 year, and I could not be more happy with who is joining me for this episode. I have been a longtime listener of their podcast, and I finally have them here to get to talk to me all about it so that way you can learn about their podcast. I have Derek Hayes. He is the host of Monsters Among Us. Derek, how are you doing today?
Good, David. How are you doing? Thank you so much for having me on.
I am doing wonderful. Your podcast is one of the few that we as a family get to listen to, like when we're on like car rides more than 20 minutes or so, we'll throw on the podcast. And it's one of the few that the whole family gets into. The kids are loving it. They dig the stories. Even my wife is like, I like listening to this guy, Derek, here. And I'm like, yeah, you know, it's a good time with the Monsters Among Us podcast on.
Well, you know, it's awesome that families can kind of get involved. There's not a lot of paranormal podcasts out there that's the case. And frankly, I'm a little bit surprised because there's some pretty scary stories on my show. So I'm surprised some of these kids can handle this. I know I probably couldn't have at their age.
I think it's a different generation. Like I remember growing up with like unsolved mysteries, like way back in the day. And it was like that was some scary stuff at the time, like nightmare inducing, depending on the episode.
Yeah. It's still spooky. If you watch it now, it's still a little spooky. Or maybe it's nostalgia's, creeping back up on me. But
I don't know. Like I haven't seen any recently, but my middle kid is so obsessed with horror movies. Every week it's like, can we watch insert like latest horror movie? It's like, no, stop asking. No. Like we'll typically let him go with some of the ones that we're familiar with, and then if we're going to watch a horror movie, it's like daytime because just in case.
You give that a little buffer, right?
Exactly. It's like, okay, after this horror movie, we need to watch a comedy movie or something lighthearted and fun just to make sure, we get it cleared out.
I remember when I was really young, Friday the 13th was obviously very popular in the mid 80s. And somehow I conned my parents into letting me watch one of them. I think it was the second one. And I remember not being able to go outside for 3 or 4 days after watching it because we lived in the middle of the woods. And it looked just like, they filmed that in, I think, New Jersey or something. So I grew up in Ohio. Very similar terrain. It looked exactly the same, especially to like a 5 or 6 year old. So I was terrified and I was convinced that Jason was out there somewhere and was going to get me. So.
Oh, my story is I was at a sleepover when I was probably like 7 or 8 and they put on Jaws. And for many years after, like I thought Jaws was in the toilet, Jaws was in the shower, Jaws was in the bathtub. Like I'd have to make sure that the shower curtain was open so I could make sure that there was nothing in there. Like there were times where that type of movie or certain other horror movies, like, okay, I got to get over this because this is affecting my life.
It's psychological. I mean, it gets embedded, and I'm not afraid of Jason Voorhees anymore, but the image is still striking. Like when I see it, I'm like, oh man, respect that guy. You better.
Absolutely, it's incredible to see like how like horror and that whole genre has changed since like the 70s and 80s to what it is now. Going like with different types of movies and styles, or now it's like the jump scares are the ones where it's like deep introspective horror. And I go ahead.
You said something that kind of ties into this. Actually, I remember back in I barely remember this. I don't remember the 70s. I was alive for like a month, but the 80s I remember pretty well. And the movies then, Well, Jaws is a perfect example. They didn't show the monster. They didn't reveal the creature until the very end, if that. And there was something about that allowed my imagination to just kind of cling on to that. It really affected me. Whereas today, I feel like you see the monster in the first 5 minutes of every movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things now where you're watching you watch certain horror movies, and it's interesting to see like which horror movies lend or not lend but tend to go towards like the 70s 80s route of not seeing it till those
Mhm.
final moments, or if they're going to be just upfront and be like, okay, here it is, here's the monster. And
Yeah.
I typically prefer the let me design the monster in my head so that way I can just be hopefully more freaked out when I see it than
Yeah.
the first 5 minutes or so.
It always seems to be the the running joke there. The human imagination is far more productive than any Hollywood producer. So if you hint at a creature, but you don't show any details, maybe there's some claws or maybe there's some slime dripping off or something, your head's going to fill in 10 times scarier content than any director, writer, or producer can.
Hmm. Absolutely. Now, Derek, I mean, you do this podcast that we're going to be talking about, but I'm curious to know, like, how did you first get into podcasting or even interested in doing podcasting? Because it's not something that you wake up and you're like, I'm going to start a podcast today. Although I think over like the past couple of years, that's what some people did was, I don't have anything to do, let me start a podcast. But you've been doing it for a while now. So what's like your origin story with getting into podcasting?
Well, it sort of is just like that. I kind of did wake up one day and decide, but there was a lot that went into that. I live in California now. I don't work in the film industry per se anymore. I still dabble from time to time. I get involved in stuff, but for 10 years I did. I started off as a PA production assistant and worked my way all the way up to the director of production at a small film company called Lakeshore Entertainment. We were doing a bunch of films like the Underworld films, Lincoln Lawyer, The Boy, movies like that. And I kind of got burned out on it. Like I was having a hard time. I wanted to write scripts. I wanted to develop and that kind of thing. And I was just having a hard time communicating with a lot of the older generation that was running the place. And I just kind of got burnt out. And I said, you know what? I'm going to find another outlet. I'm going to find some way that I don't have to rely on rich people to help me make this story come true. So I was kind of digging around like, oh, what do I want to make a short film? What do I want to do? And podcasting wasn't huge at the time. This was about 7 or 8 years ago. So, it wasn't what it is today.
Hmm.
And I kind of explored that. I listened to a handful of them from time to time. And that's when it kind of clicked for me. There was a couple that I listened to that would have guests on, which is what I do, but they would have them on live and they would just kind of ramble on for 40 minutes or so. And I would kind of lose interest. And in the back of my head, I was thinking, if these were like 5 or 6 minutes, I could really digest like 10 of these. So I, did some digging around. I kind of compared a few things and I asked some friends like, hey, you have a spooky story. You've told me before. Call this into I created a hotline. I said, call this in and let me see what I can do with this. So after a while, I started accumulating, a dozen or so stories and I put a few episodes out. And I honestly thought it would be, I got that out of my system. I'll move on to something else. But to my surprise, people listened. And within weeks, I had 5,000 listeners or something, which a lot of podcasts work very hard to get those numbers. And for some reason, what I was doing just clicked with everybody. And it's, no looking back since. I've been doing it full time for 4 years now.
That's awesome, because I know, like, I stumbled across your podcast really early on. I think it's somewhere around 2016, 2017, where it was like, okay, you had just started it. I think I got it right after the name change. And I'd been introduced to it through talking with some other podcasters, the Zeng This crew.
Oh yeah, Justin and Ellie, they're great.
Yeah, Justin and Ellie, and you'd been on with them, and then there's like a couple where like roundtable episodes that you all have done with a couple other podcasters, and it's like, okay, like this sounds right up my alley, because again, I grew up with Unsolved Mysteries when in the 80s ish, give or take. And then when I used to drive into work super early, I would always have Coast to Coast
Oh yeah.
on. And your podcast was like struck those tones of Coast to Coast plus Unsolved Mysteries, and I love like paranormal stuff and the crypt, like especially like cryptids. So it's like I really dig this, and I, I'm just so excited that you've been able to like have it be able to do it like full time now. That's like a dream of many people, and it's awesome that you got to achieve that.
Yeah, I'm incredibly lucky. I owe a lot of this success to the callers, their stories. I feel like anybody could host this show. I don't know if anybody could write it, but anybody could host it. So I put a lot of credit over to everybody that calls into the hotline and leaves their Bigfoot story or their alien story, whatever it is, that I then get to share on the show, because that's a majority of the content, let's be honest. But what's fun is, and you kind of touched on it there, Unsolved Mysteries and sightings. I didn't grow up with Coast to Coast. I'm a big fan now. I listen in syndication wherever I can find it. But growing up, it wasn't really on my radar. But Unsolved Mysteries, sightings, scariest places on Earth. There's a few other documentaries and TV shows, that kind of thing that really were. And I tried to use those as much as I could to kind of influence how I put this package together. I feel like, especially with like sightings, if you remember that show from, I think it was on Fox originally in the early 90s, I want to say. And then it moved over to Sci-Fi in the mid 90s. But they would hit like 5-6 subjects throughout an episode, and it would kind of tie them all into other things. And like, oh, remember when we looked at this? Well, here's this, that kind of thing. So I'm like, oh, that's really cool how they tie everything together like that. So I kind of took their little idea and ran with it. And now I really kind of make it my bread and butter, where if you call in a Bigfoot story from Florida, well, I'll find another Bigfoot story from Florida, or I'll find a legend that's 300 years old from the state of Florida, and we'll kind of compare these two together. And when you do that, suddenly these stories start to feel a little bit more real. They start to feel a little bit more tangible. So the long story here is that I'm incredibly lucky, but I think I did a couple things here that really kind of caught people's attention, and for some reason they're sticking around.
I also have to say, like, one of the things that my wife and I always talk about is your voice, because your voice when you're talking about the stories or providing your input after the story is over, there's something very I don't have like the words to describe it, but there's something about your voice where it has that I'm going to just say the je ne sais quoi, that there's something about your voice that just it connects people. It connects people to the story, and it lends like an aura of like, I don't know.
It's an ambiance, right?
You have a certain aura, and your voice just lends credence to the caller stories and what they're putting out there.
Well, that was a conscious decision that I had. When I first started the show, I had mic problems. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I got on Amazon. I spent $300 on a mic kit and a box that talks to my computer and all this fancy stuff. And whatever I bought just didn't work. It was recording in the wrong sample rate. It wasn't what I wanted it to be. And once I got all that fixed, then I could hear my talking voice. I guess the voice I'm speaking in now. And I was like, man, that's not spooky enough. I mean, that's not scary enough. That's not really conveying what I want to convey. And then I was thinking, like, how do I want to do this? And I decided at the time, I want to be personal. I want there to be some sort of connection, and I want that to be done with the tone of the voice. So I started, I guess, thinking of different scenarios, like where would the scenario come in? And what I compared it to was telling stories around the campfire. If I were to go camping with a group of people and there was a campfire and somebody's like, oh, Derek, tell me a story, I wouldn't tell it in the voice I'm talking in now. I would get down low and I would pause a lot, and I would basically lay out the story and let them figure it out. And when you get in their ear like that, it's almost a whisper. So then people lean in and they want to hear a little bit more. And there's some sort of psychology to it that I don't necessarily understand, but it certainly works.
Oh, it definitely works. I know I think I had talked to Justin Zenger about this, and he's like, yeah, there's the Derek that's talking, but then there's like the podcast Derek, like the voice that you do for the podcast. It's like I can't wait to hear like if there's like how much difference there are, and it's neat to listen now, and then eventually I'll hit the podcast up and it'll be the low tone, and especially those pauses, like you got the pauses in the right spots. And there's definitely times where it's like, okay, what's he gonna say next? Speak, say something.
It's funny what silence can do for you. And you got to be careful. You can't do it too much. And I think sometimes I do. I've gotten complaints, too quiet. There's too much silence. So yeah, I kind of try to find that sweet spot. But there is something to be said about leaving people on the edge, having them hang on and waiting for what's next. And that just adds to the apprehension and adds to the excitement of what's to come, the stories that are to come.
With Monsters Among Us, you hit basically the width and breadth of pretty much anything paranormal: ghosts, aliens, Bigfoot, mirrored men, government conspiracies at time. I mean, pretty much anything that the callers call in is what you've got on the show. Do you have favorites? Is there like a subsection where you're like, you know what, I love when this topic comes up?
Oh, of course. When I started the show, it was supposed to be all about monsters. It was called Here There Be Monsters. And a couple years into it, another podcaster decided that he was going to try to sue me over the name or something. So I just changed it instead of dealing with legal issues. But I kept the monster in the name because from, Jump Street, from day one, I wanted this to be about monsters. I wanted Bigfoot, Dogman, Puckwudgies. I don't care. Any creature that's out there that we haven't identified. Because I'm an animal guy. I'm a wildlife guy. So I get pretty interested in ecosystems and that kind of thing. Like, for some reason that fascinates me. And then when you apply the paranormal to some of those, you try to work Dogman into the food cycle somewhere. Like, that just fascinates me. So anyway, the point being, I wanted it to be all monsters. It's harder than it sounds, especially to get genuine calls. Like I like to think that most of my calls, if not all of them, are genuine. I do my best to try to weed out people that are just trying to get on the show or just want to tell a story. I try to pick people that make it sound like what they're saying actually happened. They have a believable tone. So I'm kind of getting off track here, but I started off wanting the monsters, but when people called in UFOs and ghosts and all these other things, I can't leave these, in this folder. I got to put these on the show. Also, early on, I was desperate for calls too. So beggars can't be choosers, So it quickly evolved from being just monsters to anything paranormal, supernatural, strange, otherworldly, that kind of thing.
Okay. I love like the monsters. I love the spooky stories. There are stories that, especially some of the when you have international callers, not only is it like their story, but because it's international, the accent, the things, because I'm not familiar with where they're calling from or what their legends are and what their stories are. There are some great calls where they talk about what's going on, and it's just riveting stuff. It's riveting to like listen to and hear them talk about like their local legends or their experiences with the supernatural, like from Australia or England or Ireland and places like that.
I don't want to toot my own horn, but I know a lot. I know a little bit about a lot of things. That's the best way to put it. In regards to the paranormal, especially here in the States, you're going to be hard pressed to find a legend that I haven't at least heard of or know something about it. But that's different when people call from other countries. Like one that comes to mind is somebody called from Greece a few seasons back, and I think he was like backpacking through the countryside or something, and he ran into a elf, I guess. I don't know how you would describe it. It was some sort of almost human entity. It was a woman, and I can't even remember the details of the interaction, but the way he told it, and the whole thing was just creepy because it was so foreign to me. Like this entity, I'd never heard of a legend that even suggests any creature, like whatever this thing was. And here he is telling us about it. So I learned just as much as the listener does when some of these international calls come in, and that's when I get pretty excited.
With getting the calls, like, and I know you said when you started out you're hard pressed for calls. Like, how has that evolved from your first couple seasons to now? Is it a constant flow every day you're getting stuff, or is it just you have stuff and then you hold on to it? Because of course when you're doing your show, it's only three or four calls depending on your time and what you're putting in as well, like on your side. So how has it evolved? But like, are you holding on to like a plethora of stories that are just unheard of?
When I started out, I had a really difficult time getting enough calls. I only did a half-hour show then, so I needed, I want to say, maybe 4 to 5 calls to fill that space. And it was a struggle. Not all of them would be good, or a couple of them I'd have to use, and I'm like, I don't know if this sounds legit or not, but I'm going to have to use it because I have nothing else. Or I'd be one short, and I'd call every person I know, like, hey, if you've heard anything weird happen to you, you call my phone number and leave this story. And I did anything I could to fill that time, and it didn't take long, honestly. Once I put the hotline out there, people started calling, and I would say I was probably second season, and I had a huge bank of calls, and I've had a huge bank of calls since then. No word of a lie, I bet you have 1,000 calls right now that I haven't played yet.
Woo!
I get anywhere from 5 to 10 a day. And Sarah and I, my wife, she works for the show, we just listen as fast as we can, and we just can't keep up. And it's a great problem to have. Trust me, it's a great problem to have. And I don't want people to be discouraged, because these calls, you never know when your call is going to be plucked from the ether. I don't have a certain system. I look at my files. I'm like, I haven't played a Bigfoot call in 2 or 3 episodes, so let's go to my Bigfoot folder. And then Bigfoot gets hit by a car. Well, that sounds great. Let's throw that in there. So that's how I build an episode. I'm like, well, what am I missing in this episode? Oh, there's no UFO calls, so let's go to the UFO folder. Let's find one in there. And, I've listened to all these so that I have an idea in the back of my head what each one of them is about. So with that information, I can build a pretty decent program and keep it pretty level. And if you're a listener and you're a fan of, one particular genre, you're going to find at least one story in there that's going to make you happy.
Absolutely. That's one of the things I always talk about on the podcast here, is that, like, not every episode is going to be for everyone. Like, I'm not going to have the same person, generally speaking, listen to every single episode and be entertained, because there's certain fandoms that they're just going to be like, no, I'm not interested in this anime show or this TV show. They'll skip over it. But I can guarantee you that, like, there is an episode somewhere for somebody that they'll be like, oh, this is right up my alley. I definitely want to listen to that. And I feel like that's the same thing with yours, especially with the stories, is that, I might not be into whatever the story is, but there's going to be a story after that I'll probably be really into.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, okay, they're telling the story for like 5 minutes. I'll get through the 5 minutes to get to like the next chunk of like, okay, here's the story I've been waiting on.
And a funny thing happens too while that's taking place. That 5-minute call, you're like, oh, I'll sit through it and wait till I get to, something I like. And as you're listening, you're like, wait, this story's pretty good. This is a pretty decent story. So you end up hearing some things that you didn't expect to like, I guess. The same thing happens to me. I don't want to say which categories it is, but there's a few categories in the paranormal that I kind of yawn at. Like, oh, here we go again. But sometimes I'm surprised, somebody will call in. I'm like, oh, well, okay. Well, that's, as far as those stories are concerned, that was a pretty good one.
I wanted to bring up one of the stories that has stuck with me ever since I heard it. And, I know that you've listened to thousands of stories, but it's the one where, and it was a woman truck driver who had like rocks thrown against her truck.
Yeah. Mickey from Oregon. Yeah.
And that story stuck with me, and it's still the one of the ones where if somebody was going to ask me about your podcast, it'd be like I would tell that story about her having that truck and having things tossed at her truck and being like, but there's no one there. Like, what's going on? Like, it is a great story.
Do you want me to tell it really quick for your listeners?
Sure, if you'd love, if you'd like to, I don't have any problem hearing it again.
I'll put as many details in as I can remember, but essentially it's from a caller named Mickey. She lives in Oregon, and I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that, she was a truck driver, a long long haul truck driver, and she was going from Oregon to somewhere in Montana, I want to say, and I think she was along the Snake River, and it was a blizzard. It was 30 below zero or something like that, and she tried to get as far as she could, and eventually it was too dangerous for her to continue. So she pulled off to the side of the road, kept her truck running because it was 30 below. If she didn't, she would literally freeze to death. Well, as she was in her truck just kind of passing the time, she noticed that there was a rat or something inside of her cab. So she was trying to figure out how to get it out or chase it out. And that's when she noticed a strange smell outside. It was coming in from the vent. And after a while, the strange smell got so strong that I think she maybe cracked the window or something. And then that's when suddenly rocks started to hit the side of her semi-truck. And they weren't hitting like as if they were rolling off the mountain. They were hitting from different angles, from different directions. And long story short, she came to the conclusion that it had to have been a Sasquatch because of the smell and the fact that she was in the middle of nowhere, 30 below zero, and there was some thing outside throwing rocks at her cab. And after a while, she started thinking about it, and she thinks that the Sasquatch, if that's what you want to call it, chased this rat into her cab, and he was trying to get it out for food or something. That's the conclusion she drew. But she told the story so great. It was just, that's the fun thing too. You get some really good storytellers in here too. But yeah, that's one of the stories that stuck with me as well.
Yeah, it's always something like there's always a story every episode. There's always one where it's like, man, that's like the story told was so good, or you get those things where they're visually like telling you that like what is going on, and in my mind it's like, oh my gosh, like this person's talking about this portal opening up next to their bed and all this stuff happening, and it's just incredible stories. I just want to say, like, if your listeners or the callers are listening to this episode, thank you for sharing your stories, because I know that I and the family and we love listening to what is being put out there, and just grateful for people giving their time, to tell you their stories.
And I'm very grateful myself, because I wouldn't have this career if it weren't for them. So I'm in the same boat.
Now, out of curiosity, because you've got the calls that you've played, you've got the calls that are stored away for the future. Do you have like some epic spreadsheet of like the base information of, it's like a Bigfoot story, it takes place in like this state, like Florida or Montana or Oregon, so that way you can link back? Because there are several times where you're like, oh, back in episode or season 5, episode 3, we talked about this thing, and now here's another phone call from this same place, different caller, connecting to that, similarly connecting to that story. Is like, do you have a big database, or is it just everything that you've heard?
It's kind of the latter. Yeah, I just remember, I try to remember a detail from literally every story. And obviously that's not going to happen. There's thousands of them, but especially the bigger stories, the really popular ones, I try to remember some details. So if something else comes up later on, I can kind of call back to it, like we talked about earlier in the show here. That said, I do have a bit of a system that allows me to find things. Like once I know what I'm looking for, I can be like, oh, okay, well, I know it's a Bigfoot call. I don't have a spreadsheet, but I do have, it's a naming convention, I guess is the best way to put it, that each of my files are named a specific way. I have the state, I have the subject matter, I have the name, I have their phone. I have every bit of information I need right there in the file name. So doing a search on my computer, doing a search on the Monsters Among Us website, between those two things, I can usually find pretty much anything that I need out of there. Every once in a while, there'll be a call or a reference or something that I can't find, and it'll drive me nuts for weeks. And that call will kind of be on the side burner waiting to kind of make that connection. And when it finally happens, it usually pays off pretty big.
Has there ever been a time where you got a call and you're like, well, I need to make a new folder for this because I've never heard a call like this before?
It used to happen all the time. I started off with I have 6 folders, and that'll cover the paranormal, right? You have aliens, you have Bigfoot, you have ghosts. That'll take care of it. And then people call in with doppelgangers and time slips and um, forest folk and just stuff that I never even imagined anybody would ever experience, let alone call me about. So now there's probably 40 different categories that these calls are spread throughout. Some of them are pretty wild. There's one of them that's just, I don't remember what I called it, but it's like a miscellaneous folder. Man, there's a name for it. And I even talked about it on the show, but I forget what it is now. But that's where I throw all the really crazy ones. Like, this doesn't fit anywhere. So this one's going in this folder. And that's my favorite place to pull from, because when I pull those out, it's always something crazy.
Oh my gosh. I was imagining this is the batshit crazy folder. This is stuff of what are they talking about? I've never heard anything like that. It's almost like you're exploring you're examining and exploring new depths of, untouched and unmarked, like a whole new subject matter. It's like, oh yeah, now we have to create new math.
Yeah, pretty much. I remember now, I call it the fringe folder is what I call it. So anything fringe just works its way in there.
Well, that's a good name to have. Better than the batshit crazy folder.
Well, that's a good one too. Maybe I'll try that for my Patreon episodes or something.
So the podcast has been running for a number of years now. I assume, continuing until such time as you have no more stories, which I guess would mean, you'd be continuing forever.
Probably.
Okay.
As far as me, I'm having a great time. I have no intention of stopping the show or leaving the show. But if that time did come, I know people love the show, and I'm not just going to shut it down or anything like that. So I feel like, and as a listener of podcasts, and all my favorite ones just stop. That always happens. And I'll just be listening one day and they're like, well, this is the last episode. And I don't want to do that to people. So if for some reason it's time for me to move on, somebody else will come in and fill my shoes.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah,
that's not in the books or anything.
That's one of the things that I was telling my kids about, because I've been doing this for 6.5 years, going on 7. And I'm like, some people, I told them, I said, people think, okay, I'm going to start a podcast. And then they get to 5 or 6 episodes in and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Because it's a lot different saying I want to do a podcast and then learning, okay, well, now I need to edit the podcast and promote the podcast and learn microphone stuff and editing tricks and all the stuff that goes into it. And I told them, I said, by episode 6 or 7, most podcasts are done. They're out of it.
Yeah. I think there's a statistic going around somewhere, or at least there was when I started, that a majority of podcasts don't make it past their 5th episode, or maybe it was even less than that. Maybe it was 3rd episode.
Yeah, I think I'd seen something like that. For you in the podcast, I assume, at least, past couple of years or when you start, you do everything. You do, you've got the calls, you do the editing, you put everything together. Is that still the case now? Do you have someone that you've got editing stuff for you, or are you still a one-man band essentially?
For the first 4.5 years, 100% one-man band. It was all me. And then it kind of got to the point where we had some decisions to make, my wife and I, as far as the show. It was growing to the point where it was already a full-time job, but now it was a couple full-time jobs, And I told her, I said, we're going to have to hire somebody, or you're going to have to quit your job and start, working on this. And that's what she did almost 2 years ago. She quit the job she had, and she started doing social media. She started selling ads, just doing a lot of the back end stuff that allowed me to focus on the creative. But it's now a 2-person show. She does all that stuff, and I take care of all the creative, but I do all the editing. I do all the research. All that stuff. Each of the calls that are called in are edited as well. A lot of people don't realize that, but not every person in this country is an eloquent speaker. But they kind of come off that way because I edit out all the ums, I edit out all the pauses that are unnecessary, because people are trying to, recollect what happened. So sometimes they'll be like, well, it was 19, and they'll do that for like 2 minutes. And, that's not good radio. So I'll just kind of trim that down and get to the point of the story. I know you didn't ask me that, but I volunteered that information anyway.
Oh, that's okay. Everybody knows listening to this podcast that I also edit out mostly for me, also for the guest of the ums and ahs and the pauses and the flubs and everything, because it is sometimes mouth goes before brain, and then other times you just can't find the words.
That happens to me all the time. The voice you hear on the show is highly edited. That's not how I normally talk. I can't talk for an hour straight mistake free. So
if you could, that would be something to listen to and see, because not having finding somebody that can do mistake free every time would be a wondrous thing to find.
There's a guy on YouTube. What's his name? Sean Evans. That's his name. He hosts Hot Ones on YouTube. He is that guy. I've never seen that guy make a mistake in dozens of episodes. He just every single time just nails it. And I'm so envious of that guy.
What is the hardest thing for you with the podcast?
Time. Time is 100% the hardest thing. It's a rigid schedule. We release every Thursday. It takes me, on a good day, a full 12-hour workday to assemble those calls. That's finding all the calls. It's finding all the references that goes to it. That's editing all the submissions so that, like I said, take all the ums and stuff out. Now I have the clean audio for everything. Then a whole nother 12 hours to write the show. And then another 12 hours to produce the show. So, we're looking at 36 hours right there just in those 3 days. And that's a quick turnaround. And I like to watch football. I like to go do things with my wife on the weekend. So I try to take some time off too. And it's tight. It's tight to get it out. But after, going on 7 years, I've gotten pretty good at it. I've identified things. I found ways to work ahead in a couple spots. So it gets better. But if there's anything that's really a hindrance in producing the show, it's the timeline.
I can understand that. And I think one of the things that I like about your podcast format is that you take breaks, that you're like, okay, this season's done and you're off for X amount of time to just be off before the next season starts up. And it's like, that's a good thing. I was like, dang, I should have thought of that when I started my podcast.
You know how many people have told me that?
Well, what do you mean I have to put an episode out every week?
Yeah, well, I did it because of I was basing everything off of old TV shows and movies and stuff, and there was always a series finale. In my mind, I was thinking I need to have a huge series finale, and in order to do that, you have to have seasons. Or did I say series finale? I meant season finale. I'm so glad I did that, because at the time I wasn't thinking about breaks or me needing some time off or any of that. That wasn't even a consideration, because like I said, I thought this was a hobby that 10 people would listen and I'd move on. But, as the show developed and I would spend 22 weeks straight just writing show after show after show after show, I would kind of be burned out after a while. I'm like, I gotta take a break. I need to look at something that's not a ghost or something that's not a UFO. And these little breaks have really helped me out. And we've timed them too, so they're kind of in dry spots of the year. Like nobody does anything in August, so we're off in August. And February is kind of like the most dead month in all of podcasting, so we're off January, February, that area too. So it works out great. And like I said, so many podcasters have come up to me and be like, man, you're so smart. I don't know why I didn't think to put a season in. Like I could really use a break. I'm like, man, I wish I was smart, but it's all a happy accident.
Since you've been doing Monsters Among Us, I know that you've been able to have like other opportunities in paranormal endeavors.
Mm-hmm.
Did they approach you? Did you approach them and say like, hey, I've got an idea, let's do this? How has being doing Monsters Among Us evolved with you doing work outside of the Monsters Among Us realm?
Well, I did some TV, a couple shows on the Travel Channel. In Search of Monsters was one of them, and the other is Paranormal Caught on Camera. Now, I'm no longer shooting with either program anymore, but they reached out to me. apparently they found me online or something and thought I could do the job. I don't know why they thought that, but so I went down to LA and shot with them for several months, each production. And that was cool. That was a fun experience, but I'm just, a talking head, and it didn't really interest me a whole lot. Like I'm not the kind of guy that wants to be on TV. If I could have somebody else host this show and do as good a job as I can, or do what I want, I guess it's a better way to say it, do what's in my head. There probably a lot of people can do better than me, but to produce what's in my head, then I'm all about it, because I'm not the guy that wants to be out in front. That's not my personality. I'm the behind the scenes guy, and that's what I was when I worked in Hollywood as well. So to answer your question, it was fun, but I'm glad it's over, if that makes any sense. That said, I'm in talks with other people. I have a lot of connections down the hill, down in LA, and so I'm constantly in talks with different TV show ideas and that sort of thing. So one of these days, something's going to hit, and you guys might see something I created on television. I don't know if I'll be in it. Hopefully not, but it could happen. So there's definitely other things going on behind the scenes here at Monsters Among Us, on top of David Flora, who's host of Blurry Photos and now Hysteria 51, co-host there. He and I shot a documentary film a couple years ago. Actually, we shot it last year. We've been working on it for a long time, and we're about to release that. So it's called Shadows in the Desert, High Strangeness in the Borrego Triangle, and it's about Anza Borrego Desert State Park here in Southern California. It's kind of a window area, one of those mysterious places that we kind of stumbled upon, and we created our own documentary on that. And that should be coming out, I think, by the time this airs, it probably is out somewhere. So you should do a search, maybe Amazon Prime or something like that. But long story short, again, yes.
If it's out, people that are listening, it'll be in the show notes. So that way you can click on it and go check it out. So that way you don't have to search around. I'll just have the link for it out there.
And if it's not out, it will be very soon. We're working with distributors right now.
Awesome. Now, one of the things that interests me, my daughter had got we were like in a hotel room for a couple days, and my daughter stumbled across the Travel Channel, all those the ghost stories and all those paranormal shows that are out there, like the Pyramid in Alaska type stuff.
Yeah.
As somebody that gets people's stories and puts the stories out, what are you do you have thoughts on those shows? Are they things that you watch and that you're hey, let me see what's going on and what other people are doing? Or is it stuff where you're yeah, you know what, I'm not going to watch it because I've got my own stuff going on here?
I think the nature of my program allows me to indulge in other people's content without the fear of necessarily copying them. I know a lot of podcasters say that, oh, I don't listen because I don't want to accidentally pick up something and repeat it. I do that all the time, and that's kind of my bread and butter. Oh, well, this person said this, but I do it a little different. I don't claim that I'm not trying to get credit for it, and I'm not accidentally doing it. I'm doing it on purpose. This is the guy. If you want to talk about Dogman, go for this guy. You want to talk about ghosts, go for this lady or whatever. I have no reservations about propping other people up or exposing them to the audience if they're doing good work. And I try to do that all the time. I'm not sure if that's what you were asking necessarily, but.
I was more interested, do you watch those shows?
Oh, do I watch the shows? Yes, right.
Yeah.
Yes. To answer your question, some I do. Honestly, most of them are so hokey, I can't get through them. Quite honestly. And I might or might not have been on some of those programs. If you have a new approach and your hosts are likable, that's your working formula, right? I'm looking at shows like Expedition X. I like that show. Josh Gates's vehicles. What's the Bigfoot one? Expedition Bigfoot, I think. There's a lot of expedition in these. Yeah, there's a few of them that I like, but for the most part, they're kind of hokey, kind of corny. Now, early 2000s, you have Monster Quest, you have Monsters and Mysteries in America. There's a handful of those that were, I can't say they were taken more seriously. Maybe they were, but production value's better, or there's less goofiness in it, I guess. and that's what I liked about it.
Yeah, Monster Quest. I remember that one from years ago. That was one where I always watched it. That's primarily my my paranormal show right there. Was that one?
Yeah, it was a great series, and I thought they were bringing it back, but I haven't heard anything in like a year or so. I think the pandemic killed a lot of projects, so that might have been a victim of it as well.
Oh, absolutely. That's, the past couple of years where it's like, oh, this is supposed to come out. Never mind, it's not coming out anymore, or it's changed and they have to redo stuff. So yeah, I can totally understand, certain projects, especially if it's travel projects having to be put on hold.
Well, it's incredibly difficult to get anything like that made whatsoever, let alone with a global pandemic, shutting everything down. So it doesn't take a whole lot to derail a project to the point where it just never happens.
Now, outside of the spooky stuff, like if you're watching like movies or TV shows, like what do you gravitate towards? Is like, do you have like, what are your favorite TV shows or favorite movies that you like to put on and watch when you're not doing the podcast grind?
Whoa. If you ask my wife, terrible television and terrible movies. Yeah, I don't like new stuff. And I'm one of those weird people that I'll watch the same movie 45 times before I sit down and watch anything new. And, maybe part of it's psychological. Like, I like the idea of knowing what's going to happen, and I'm not going to have to deal with now another surprise. Like, I got a lot going on. So it may be a little bit of that. It may be, I don't know, just the nostalgia of it. Anything 80s, anything 90s, I really enjoy. I'm a big horror guy, but I've kind of fallen out of favor with horror in the past decade or so. There just hasn't been a whole lot that really excited me. Mostly because of the genre, I believe. You don't see monster movies anymore, and that's kind of my bread and butter. I love the monster movies, or even like we talked about Jason Voorhees earlier, Michael Myers, any of those. You can almost call them monsters, But you don't see too many of that stuff anymore, or too much of that stuff anymore. It's mostly psychological, really messed up stuff that, I don't know. I'm not afraid of that stuff. It's just that maybe I get enough of it throughout the show, because there's some pretty dark stuff that we play on the show from time to time. So maybe there's enough of it there. But as far as specifics are concerned, man, what do I watch? The Office. I watch The Office all the time. I watch a lot of comedy, believe it or not, because I want something out of the genre, out of the everyday grind, like everything's spooky. My office is all decorated spooky, and I try to take a break from that whenever I can. I like Seth Rogen movies, goofy stuff like that. And then some obscure, like I said, 90s horror films, early 2000s horror films. There's some pretty good ones in that time span too. I'm not being very specific, but that's, I'm having a hard time even coming up with titles. Like Wrong Turn I watched recently. I rented that on Amazon. I remembered that from probably college when I watched that the first time. So little things like that excite me. The Mothman Prophecies, of course, which is a movie that the company I used to work for produced, and I didn't work for the company at the time, which kind of sucks. But I did work at the office, and I would see like Mothman things laying around. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, I don't know. I don't watch a lot of TV. I guess I watch a lot of sports. I guess that would be where I spend most of my time watching television, especially this time of year with football.
Are you college football or NFL?
I'm a college football guy for sure. I'm a big Ohio State fan. I grew up in Ohio, but I'm also a Cincinnati Bengals fan. And last year was pretty exciting. So I'm now no longer afraid to tell people that I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan. So for a long time, I was terrified.
I adopted my NFL team just based off of friends that I had made. So like I was like, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. Now, granted, I knew like the Buffalo Bills had lost the Super Bowl like 4 years in a row, and it's like, oh, that's kind of embarrassing, and they were not a great team. But last year, again, like I think it was last year where there's like some really great playoff games where it's like, man, these games are really good. Like they're high scoring and everyone's doing great playing football. And is the Bills, the Bengals, there's like some really close games where I was just it was exciting NFL football, because I think NFL doesn't excite me as much as college football does, because every game matters for college football, where
Yeah.
NFL is like, well, if we win half the games, we're kind of like in the playoffs, so yay for us.
That's the funny thing about college football. You lose one game and your season might be over. So there's only 10, 15 teams in the whole country that are really competing for that spot at any given time. So I get what you're saying. And as far as the reason for picking your team, mine's probably worse. I'm a big cat fan. Like I like big cats. That's kind of my thing. And I picked the Bengals because they had stripes on their helmet, right? I was probably 5 years old or something, and my dad and everybody in my family, they're all Browns fans. We grew up pretty much in the middle. I think it's 2 hours to Cleveland and like 2.5 to Cincinnati. But I remember this is stuck in my memory that I chose the Bengals as I was sitting down with my dad watching the Bengals-Browns game. And I'm like, I think I like the team with the stripes on the helmet. And he wasn't happy about that, obviously, as a Browns fan. But here we are 30-some years later. There's nothing you can do about it. But it's funny how we pick our things, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like my kids pick out like if we do have like football or hockey on or something like that, it's like they pick out whichever colors they like the best or whichever mascot they like. It's like, that's cool. I mean, you know, you guys will figure out who you want to cheer for eventually or root for. None of the kids are interested in any of the sports really. Like we went to the Hockey Hall of Fame, and I was like, I love this. Like, I get to see the Stanley Cup and touch it and everything and look at all the stuff from, you know, the Gretzky era of hockey. And the kids are like, yeah, okay. You know, they've watched like one hockey game and maybe like caught some on TV, but they're like, okay, it's whatever.
I feel like there's a time in your life when that stuff really gets exposed to you. For football, it was me very early on. I had a famous relative that was a coach for my team, actually. And so my whole family's like, oh, we're royalty, like, whatever. Like they had kind of chip on their shoulder about it, which I kind of got into, right? Well, that's kind of cool. Like the coach of your favorite team is your grandpa's cousin or whatever.
Right.
You outgrow that pretty quickly. Then you go to college and you get a little drunk and you go to a hockey game or something like that. And you're like, oh, I really like hockey. Like, this is great. So it's funny how these things kind of find their way into your lives at different times, and they have different meanings for you then as well. Like hockey, like it's exciting, it's fun, but you know, if my Blue Jackets lose, I'm not going to cry. But Ohio State loses a national championship, there's a good chance there's a couple tears. I'll be honest with you.
Oh yeah, that the funny thing is that like when Ohio State went, because we're like or I say we, my wife is totally not into football, but we the family is like SEC, like Florida Gators, and it's like, okay, well, by extension, you know, we'll support like whoever the SEC team is, Alabama or whatever. It's like, and there's that huge rivalry between like the SEC and teams and Ohio State, and it's like, yep, like I have friends that are into Ohio State. It's like, oh gosh, like here we go again.
Yeah. It's funny when it's the other way around. Like Michigan was in the finals last year, and I was not rooting for the Big Ten team. Let me tell you that. I was very pleased with that outcome. The Big Ten didn't need to win last year.
Oh my gosh. So Derek, on top of like obviously like the podcast, like with you doing the podcast, but one of the things that you have is a wonderful like community of people like that are talking about the podcast, that you have a robust Facebook group that talks about the podcast. Like, did it, I assume, you know, just organically came about of like, hey, you need a place for people, like for people that are interested in the podcast to talk about.
Yeah. You know, my wife worked for a reality television program, reality television producer, rather. She did Ghost Hunters. She did that Alaska Pyramid show you were talking about. She did the social media for all these shows. So early on, even before I started Monsters Among Us, I knew that social media was extremely important, more important then than it is now. I think it's kind of lost favor for a lot of people at this point. But, you know, 5-6 years ago, it was a really big deal. So I took her advice and I really pushed that heavily, and I actually got one of the listeners. I just reached out and said, I can't keep up with the Facebook. Anybody want to help me out? Any listener want to just come in and help me out? There's a free t-shirt in it for you or something. Mm-hmm. And I got super lucky a listener named Addie Lloyd, who's now a great friend of ours. She's like, I'll do it. Like, I'm a teacher and I'm off all summer. I can help you do all this stuff. So that was like 4 years ago or something. And she's still running our Facebook page for us. And, the thing keeps growing. It keeps growing. And there's all sorts of great discussions and stuff over there. If you're going out of town and you're like, I wonder if there's any spooky places in this area, you just put that up on the Facebook and 10 people will give you a list of all the haunted places in the town you're headed to. So it's a really great resource. I use it from time to time, but I see a lot of other people using it for their own stuff. But yeah, the fan base is great. And that's only a small portion of the actual listeners. I get all kinds of emails, I get all kinds of messages, and I get so many that I can't reply to most of them, quite honestly. And that bothers me, but it's either I put a show out or I sit there and answer emails all day. So, but I do read every one of them at the very least. And I hear from people from all over the world. So the fan base is strong and those people are amazing.
And it's something because, a lot of the times, like when it comes to like award stuff, it's like, okay, you got to get the people to vote. And last year, you got the People's Choice Podcast Award winner for like the Society Culture and the Paranormal podcast for a Best Paranormal Podcast.
Yeah, I got really lucky last year. I didn't expect to win either of those. The ceremony for the People's Choice was playing on YouTube, and Sarah had it up on the living room TV, and she's like, "Oh, come in and watch this. Come in and watch this." I'm like, I'm gonna go make dinner. So I'm in the kitchen making dinner. She's in there watching it. I just hear her screaming from the other room, like, maybe I won. So I went in and check it out, and of course, there it is. Yeah, it's fun, and I think it does a lot to help the show grow, and I think that's really why we're kind of pursuing stuff like that. I mean, awards are great and everything, but the reality of it is people see the name, people see, oh, it's an award winner, let's check this out, and it's an excellent way for people to find the show.
Mm-hmm. And it's something, to have that many people be able to come out and be like, okay, you know what? Because I know some of them, require you to register. And that's always like the thing for me. It's like, I got to register for a website to vote. But to have that, like, dedication of the fan base is always such a great thing to have, to be out there and be like, I want to support this podcast, which is wonderful, because I know, like, getting people to do anything is something where it's like, okay, hopefully if I ask 10 people to do something, maybe one person will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's incredible that they go through the process. Cause like you said, you do have to like register and do all this stuff. The one, I don't know which one it is, but one of them has 2 series of voting. You vote once and then they have another set of judges, or I don't know how it all works. So for us to win, people really had to be devoted and really want us to, to take home these trophies. So they went out there and did all this stuff to do it. And I got to say, that motivates me. That keeps me, mid-December, and it's almost Christmas time. Man, I'd really like to take some time off. That's the kind of thing that's like, all right, well, there's all these people that are out there voting for me. Like, I got to sit here and finish this episode and get this thing out for everybody. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, I guess. It helps everybody.
I guess one last question before we start wrapping up, as far as like being in like the paranormal podcasting world, what would you love to see people do in podcasting with relation to paranormal, or if there's people that are already doing it, like who would you point to and be like, hey, like they do a great show, you should check them out? Or maybe like somebody's lacking something, like if you're like into this, you should really like make a podcast and do it, and get out there and make something happen.
Oh, you're trying to get a new podcast idea, David?
I have so many podcast ideas, but fitting my, like, again, what I do here is nothing to what your 36 hours of work is. But between my full-time job and the family and the podcasting stuff and everything, I don't have enough time in the day for everything that I want to try and create.
Yeah, I have the same problem. As far as other ideas, like from time to time, like things will pop into my head. I'm like, oh, it'd be really cool if this existed. But as quickly as it popped in, it's popped back out, and I can't even recall a single one of them at the moment. But as far as other people, what gets me excited on a podcast is personalities. The content's all the same, basically. From show to show, they're going to talk about the same couple hundred experiences, But what gets me excited and what gets me hooked to an episode is the personality. How's the person delivering this information? And there's a few programs out there that I really like. Obviously, David Flora. We're good friends now, but I started off being a big fan of his show. I didn't know him at all. I was just a listener, and I kind of reached out and we hooked up in different ways, and it kind of snowballed into what we're working on now. There's other people like Ken Lane, who has a little heard about show out here called Desert Oracle, and it all takes place around Joshua Tree National Park, the high desert region over there here in Southern California. And he's one of those, oh man, how would I even describe it? He's laid back. He's a desert guy. Just the way he talks, the words he uses, the cadence he has. It's just a ton of fun to listen to, and you can really get lost in a show like that. And of course, he's talking about creepy stuff, so that's also a lot of fun. But there's a bunch of other podcasters that I really like. Expanded Perspectives are great. Into the Fray, Shannon's awesome over there. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of people. Bigfoot Collectors Club is another that we listen to from time to time. And what they all have in common is they all have really strong hosts that over the years have really developed a personality that's likable and that you want to learn from. And that's my biggest draw. Like, the information can be as interesting as can be, but if the person's dry or has the wrong tone or anything like that, like it's harder to absorb that information.
Absolutely. And it's something to see, like, to see how everyone interacts within the community, because there is, or at least, when in my limited view of the paranormal side of the podcasting world, that you do have overlap, and you have like people guesting and appearing on other shows, or doing like how you did with the roundtable episodes with a number of different hosts. And it's always interesting to like listen to that and be like, oh, well, I like what they're saying. Let me take a listen to their podcast and check it out, or what they're doing, their work. And I think that's one of the cool things to see, is like when everyone gets together and gets to have like their discussion times, or their moments or interviews, and learn about them, and then learn about their podcast and go from there.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun to meet up with other hosts and kind of compare and contrast what you're talking about, and different theories and different experiences and stuff like that. But for me, again, it just comes down to that personality. That's the most important thing for me, as far as tuning in.
Now, we're recording it early September. This episode comes out the end of November. What does 2023 look for you, podcasting wise, Monsters Among Us wise? The same schedule, same season release. Do you have anything special lined up for the podcast, or for even like the Patreon, or what is your future plans for Monsters Among Us into this next year?
Well, we're coming back. I think it's on September 15th, whatever that Thursday is, right in that time span. And we're coming back with a special, as we always do. We always kick off every season with a themed special. We do like hospital calls, military calls, trucker calls. And this one's just transportation, any mode of transportation. And man, do we have some good calls. There's ghosts on boats. There's creatures on planes. There's all kinds of weird stuff that's involved in this. And it's doing better than I thought it would. When I came up with this idea, I thought, oh, maybe people will get this, maybe they won't. But they really seem to respond to this transportation thing, because I think it's so vague, it could really, count for anything. So that's coming up. That's our season opener, and that's going to be probably a 2-hour episode, something like that. It's going to be extra long. And then the season's going to be the same. I have some excellent calls this year that we do every year, but there's some extra special ones on this one. So we'll be sprinkling those out throughout the season. And down the line, it probably won't happen in season 14, which is upcoming, but down the line, we're talking about expanding to doing maybe twice a week or something like that. Once we can kind of get our feet underneath us, and we might hire some help or something like that. We're trying to figure all this out right now. So it could be a thing where down the line, there could be 2 episodes a week or something like that for you to enjoy. So that's a little teaser that you can hang hang on to there for a little bit.
Now, for people that have listened to this episode and they're like, you know what, dang it, I need to I need to listen to Monsters Among Us. I need to check out what Derek does and what we've been talking about this whole episode. What are the best places to find you out there in the world of the internet?
Well, you can find Monsters Among Us anywhere that you can find a podcast. I'm pretty sure we have it covered across the gauntlet there. We release every Thursday, usually about noon West Coast time. And like I said, we come back on September 15th. You can find us anywhere, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, all that kind of thing. And you can find us over on social media. We have accounts at Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Awesome. And I'll have the links to everything in the show notes, so that way if you're listening, you can just click on them and find the podcast, and you can find the documentary if it's available, and the links to all the socials will be there, so that way you can just click in and go there and check out Derek and the work that he and his wife now do, along with the wonderful, again, to the people that call in and share their stories with Derek and the rest of the people that get to listen. Thank you for doing that. And I'll make sure to link to that way if you need to report your sighting or your experience. That way you can also, click on that link and, provide Derek more content for this podcast that he does.
Oh, yeah. If I may, I can leave the number here as well. If you have an experience.
Of course.
I didn't wait for the answer. I guess I should have. If you have an experience you'd like to share on the show, I have a toll-free hotline in the U.S. here. It's 1-888-608-NIGHT. That's 1-888-608-6444. Again, that's toll-free 24 hours.
I do want to ask, as far as that number goes, how lucky were you to get night at the those last numbers?
Not lucky at all. Truth be told, I spent 3 or 4 days, full days. I'm not talking a couple hours here or there. I spent the whole day typing in different numbers at this website, trying to find something that I could repeat like that people would remember. Because I knew if it's just a series of numbers, people aren't going to call it, people aren't going to remember. But if I could make, repeatable and it gets stuck in somebody's head like an earworm, then if something happens, they're like, oh, I remember that number, and they'll call. And I got that from, believe it or not, Unsolved Mysteries. If you remember Robert Stack, at the end of every episode, he would ask you if you have a story or whatever. If you have any information, call their number, which was 1-800-876-5353. And then he always said, if you wish, you need not leave your name. And that stuck with me. What are we, 30 years out of that? So that stuck with me, and that's all I needed to know. I'm like, well, that's what my number's going to be. It's going to be read the same way. So inside baseball.
That's awesome. I love little stories like that. So good. But Derek, I want to say thank you for giving time out of your schedule to come hang out and talk with me today, because I truly had a wonderful experience just getting to listen to your stories and getting to do inside podcasting baseball with you, to hear about your experiences. It was absolutely my pleasure.
Well, mine as well, and I appreciate you having me on. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, so I've knocked this off of my bucket list here.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.